Nicola Sturgeon, Scotland's First Minister, has outlined plans for a second Scottish independence referendum. She said this.
Second, I will now take the steps necessary to make sure that Scotland will have a choice at the end of this process. A choice of whether to follow the UK to a hard Brexit or to become an independent country, able to secure a real partnership of equals with the rest of the UK and our own relationship with Europe.
So why does she want Scotland to have another independence referendum? Well, on the 18th of September 2014, just over 2 years ago, Scotland voted to stay as a part of the United Kingdom by a 10% margin, or around 400,000 votes. Turnout was very high at 84.6%, and the enthusiastic nationalists were defeated. This was in part due to a series of promises aimed at giving Scotland more power, known as the vow. At the time, the SNP claimed this.
If you lose the referendum, will that settle it for a generation?
Well, I think the SNP have always said that, in our view, these kind of referendums are once-in-a-generation events. This is probably a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I mean, you've talked in the past about it being for a generation. Is that still your view?
Yes, it is. I mean, and by that, what I mean is, if you remember the previous, I mean, I know you do, constitutional referendum in Scotland, there was one in 1979, and then the next one was in 1997. That's what I mean by a political generation. In my opinion, and it is just my opinion, then this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity.
Since when was a generation only 2 years? Well, the nationalists argue that a lot has changed since 2014's overwhelming vote, primarily the UK-wide vote of 17.4 million people to leave the EU last June. However, not only has the SNP claimed that Brexit is the main reason driving a second Scottish independence referendum, but also other reasons such as Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister. This shows the SNP just want independence and don't care about anything else. Whilst I accept the Leave vote to be a huge change in the future of the UK, this is no justification for a second Scottish vote. And this is why. The EU referendum was announced as Tory policy in early 2013, meaning Scottish voters knew there was a chance that the UK could leave the EU. Yet they still voted to stay in the UK by a sizable majority.
That is why I am in favour of having a referendum.
If Nicola Sturgeon is calling this referendum to keep Scotland in the EU, she is deeply misguided. By the potential dates of the second Scottish independence vote, the UK will be negotiating its exit deal from the European Union, or could have even left already. This means Scotland couldn't stay in the EU, as the UK would have left by the time Scotland had left the UK. As presumably there will be a 2-year period, as proposed in 2014, for Scotland to have negotiations to leave the United Kingdom. Plus, even if the UK had voted to remain in the EU and Scotland had voted to leave the UK, Scotland would still have to reapply for membership of the EU, which in its current status it would fail to do so, or at least would find it extremely difficult or impossible, according to the previous President of the European Commission in 2014. Furthermore, Spanish politicians have suggested they would veto Scotland from joining the EU, as this would only encourage their own nationalist region, Catalonia, to drive for their own independence plans. Not only might Spain block an independent Scotland from joining the EU, but Scotland's finances don't meet current EU requirements, as Scotland has massive amounts of public debt. This would mean Scotland losing membership of the UK and the EU, but in 2014 and 2017 respectively, the Scottish people hugely voted against both options. So, in the unlikely event that Scotland does manage to join the EU, what would this mean? To join the EU, it takes years of negotiations. For example, the last country to join the EU was Croatia in 2013. So how long did it take from applying to join to actually join? 10 years. That's how long an independent Scotland might have to wait as a non-EU member to join the EU. That's 10 years of uncertainty, and 10 years of, in Nicola's words, a race to the bottom with environmental and workers' rights at risk. Well, it would also mean adopting the euro, as the pound would not be an option for 2 reasons. 1. It is likely that, as in 2014, the UK government would veto Scotland from using the pound to make independence an unattractive option for voters. 2. Have Scottish voters ever voted to join the euro? No. It is a requirement for all nations to join the euro if a nation joins the EU. Joining the euro would be a disaster for Scotland. It is an unstable currency with risks of paying bailouts and losing control over interest rates. despite Nicola Sturgeon's wishes to bring control to the Scottish people.
Sturgeon.
Well, independence gives Scotland control over economic levers.
So what has changed since 2014? Well, to the nationalists, nothing. They've always wanted to leave the UK. However, in reality, their main argument has collapsed. Alex Salmond, ex-First Minister and SNP leader, claimed that oil revenues would boom with an independent Scotland. But, as with most things for the SNP, reality is much different to rhetoric, with oil revenues nosediving since the first vote. So, to conclude, the SNP wants another referendum because Scots didn't know there would be a Brexit vote, even though they did. Plus they want another vote to keep Scotland in the EU, even though they can't. Even if they could, which they can't, they would have to adopt the euro. In addition, the SNP said that oil revenue would boom, even though it hasn't. And to top it all off, the Scottish people don't even want another referendum, according to recent opinion polls. The SNP are being fanatical idealists with no connection to Scottish voters or facts. It seems the SNP have sought to remove the word pragmatic from the Scottish dictionary. Thank you for watching, and if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more referendum content.